Hey guys, it's Alan out in the workshop. I want to show you guys something here. This is a wet palette. This is something that I had not even heard of until last weekend when I was at a convention, and Jason from Clear Horizon Miniatures was using one of these. I had no idea anything like this even existed or what they were for. So he showed me what he was using his for, and I decided to go ahead and order one. So here is the one that just came today. I'm going to open it up and check it out. So first, for those of you who are like me, who have never heard of such a thing, basically what this is as the name implies, it's a palette for paints and it's wet. The whole point is that when you put down some color on the palette, it won't dry up because the palette itself has moisture to it. It's not super wet, it just has enough to keep the paint from drying, or for some period of time. Probably not forever, but for some period of time. So I thought this was interesting because when I'm painting micro armor, especially like wheeled vehicles, if I've got 20 or 30 of them and each vehicle has 8 wheels or whatever, do the math, that's a lot of wheels. So I'm sitting there painting and painting and painting and painting, and as I'm going, the paint on my palette or in the little plastic water bottle cap or whatever I'm using for my paint, it's over there drying up, and I'm constantly adding a little bit of water to it and trying to bring it back to life. The same is true with painting armored vehicles with camouflage on them. I'll paint all of one color and then all of another color, and then on a third or fourth color on many vehicles at once. And quite often I'm battling paint that's drying up all the time. So this sounded like a pretty cool idea, so I went ahead and ordered one and thought I would give it a try. So basically it's just a little plastic box that opens up, and inside is this palette paper which comes out, and then there's a foam pad in there. The idea is that you take one of these pieces of palette paper here. Oops, didn't even do that very well. Put some water in here, get this foam wet, and then put the palette paper in there, and that becomes your paint palette. And this paper will be moist, and it'll stay moist, I assume, because there's water in the foam underneath. And then you apply your paint on there and start using it. So I'm going to try this real quick. And I don't even know how much water you're supposed to use. Might have come with instructions. Oh, it certainly did. Remove the pad of palette paper. Thoroughly saturate the sponge with water. Thoroughly saturate. That's not a unit of measure that I'm familiar with, so let's just see what happens here. And now from what Jason told me at the convention when he was using his, he said you can get it too wet and then it gets kind of messy. So I want to be careful not to do that. But I also want to thoroughly saturate it as the instructions say to do. It would be kind of cool if they said, use a half a cup or so many ounces or whatever. But they didn't. They just said thoroughly saturate. And my understanding is that once you are using this, you can close it up and leave it for some time, maybe a couple of days or so, and it'll stay moist. And even if there's paint on the palette, the paint might also stay fresh in there and not dry up. Okay, so the palette paper is kind of curling up on me a little bit. Oops. It's not as easy as I thought it was going to be. There we go. So, palette paper is in there. The foam is saturated, I think enough. It's just moist, but not, super wet. So basically the idea is you just pop a little bit of paint on there. And take your brush and just, as you normally would, you just start painting. But the idea is, because this is wet, as you kind of spread the paint out a little bit, it will kind of thin out a little bit too. And you can also have a second color here, and then just like you would on any other palette, you know, drag them together and mix them and create the color you want. So theoretically, I can close this up and come back to this tomorrow, and this paint will probably still be okay to use. We're going to find out. So it's an interesting idea. I'm going to try to use it. I'm not going to sit here and paint for the next hour and just let the video run and, you know, let you guys see that it doesn't dry out. This is something that's just going to have to get used over time and see. Like, you know, this paint here that I've mixed up here, it'll be real interesting to see, you know, in an hour or so, or even tomorrow after I close this up, if I come back and that's still usable paint or if it's dried up. And I imagine since the sponge underneath is wet and it's probably going to keep the moisture wicking up to the paper, the paint should, I guess, just stay usable and stay wet. So interesting idea. I'm going to have to play around with it, like I said, and see if I like it. I talked to, like, Jason uses his all the time. I talked to Harold from Clear Horizon Miniatures also. He said he tried one and didn't care for it and doesn't use it. So, you know, different strokes for different folks. I'll give it a try, and I'll report back as to whether or not I like it and if I'm going to keep using it or not. But it's an interesting idea, and if it does what it's advertised to do, then it might just be a cool thing. Now, another thing, I guess, if I was going somewhere else to work, I could close this up, take it with me, get there, pop it open, and my pre-mixed paints are already there waiting for me. I don't know how useful that is or not, but interesting that you could just take it with you and your palette has the paints on it that you've been using and they're all ready for use. So we'll see. It was pretty cheap. God, I wish I could remember now. I want to say it was like no more than about 15 bucks. So it's an interesting thing to give a try and see if it makes my life any better on the workbench. Or if I don't like it, it's just going to go on a shelf somewhere and I'll forget all about it. But we'll find out. Thank you very much.